Recording. Okay, so let me tell you where we're at from where I'm standing. Um, so far, 3 people total have turned in a draft that I would call a complete first draft, and one person turned in a partial draft. Apologize for the background noise right now. So everybody who is still working on their first draft, who hasn't turned it into me, I need you for this first hour to be working on that. And you can pop into the chat, or if we need to go in a breakout room, or we can just talk in the main room if you need some advice. Now, those who turned it in, you already got feedback from me, including the partial draft. Okay. So I'll give you the choice of either making up missing work, if there are missing discussion posts or such like that, or to dig right into revising the draft into your second draft, knowing that that's due next week. So is it okay if we have screens on for the most part while we do this, or to be more comfortable to sort of just let you work as though it's a homework session for this first hour? And silence. Homework session. Okay. Fair enough. So as you work then, what I'll do is drop into the chat privately for each of you, and if you're missing work, I'll just sort of let you know, remind you what you're missing from me. And Graham, if you want to do the same thing, that would be fine as well.
Sure. Yeah, I see. I'm looking on Canvas and looks like most everyone has stuff in. There's some people we don't have in the class anymore, so I'll just have to. Or I guess, is that updated? 13 of us right now, or is that?
Let's see. We have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe 13, but there's a couple folks who haven't been with us for a while now.
Okay. Well, I see. What I think I'm going to do is just while we're here today, go through and mark down who doesn't have it, and I will just message you in the chat. So
Okay.
I'll have to have a public hearing.
If anybody wants me to look over their paper, I'm available.
I'm also happy to look at anybody's draft during this session, in case that wasn't clear. Oh, you can go, Elizabeth. Sorry, I just saw your... Yeah, you don't have to be here.
Okay, well, I'm going to go read essays that people turned in and give some feedback. So if you do need me for anything, please text me. I am right at my computer.
Awesome. All right, see you later. So... I see your message, Shay. Give me a moment to finish the one I was typing here. I'll get right back to you. Um, okay, and then response to Jade. Okay. Okay.
Hey, Amr, do you know Michelle's status? No.
I haven't heard anything from her in a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, I text didn't get anything. So,
No response, right?
because yeah, that was one person that's in there, so that I think would make it 11, but she's the 12th.
I
Right.
think Michelle is out of the program.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Okay. So that means that like our true number is 11, and maybe we'll still get some work from Janie, but we might not see her a lot.
She's been doing all her works, with the exception of the last reading, but yeah.
Okay, that's good. So she's more on top of it for your side of things than mine then.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
Totally. And everybody, in about 8 minutes, we'll shift gears and start doing a little inventory of those tropes for getting off the hook. Like I said, I wanted to end.
Not to distract too much from the overall conversation, but or homework session, but Amr, I had a very interesting intersection with racism within a phone call I had this past few days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a person who I used to work with in the city of Portland who lives in Colorado now. Very very Christian, from Hawaii. His dad's a pastor, but we got in quite an argument and proceeded with me saying, "Don't make me hang up," and then he did hang up. And so, but it was really because I was griping on him for the toxicology report for George Floyd, just saying like it doesn't, trying to say that matters, and actually utilizing some of the things that we were talking about making the saying that because this person's a criminal or has a criminal history, they're somehow delegitimized. So just that was, yeah, it was quite a, but of course seeing that the problem with those conversations is when people know that they're wrong, it gets then.
Yeah, nobody likes to be wrong, right? You get defensive and check out. I just had somebody try to bring up the 2017 events of Evergreen. It was like a, case in point of why cancel culture is out of control, and the Harper's Magazine letter writers were totally on point. And it was because I was basically like screw Barry Weiss, right? The Times op-ed editor that just resigned and has like that sort of long history of anti-Palestinian sentiment, all the way to the extent of like, getting people fired from tenure track positions, like, really silencing people's free speech. And so I was just calling out the hypocrisy, right, of, writing about the loss of free speech when you got that type of track record. And it was like, oh, wasn't the Evergreen case exactly an example of this as well? No. So I just a little while ago was looking through my old FOIA request on Lord Voldemort, he who shall not be named over Zoom.
Don't give him airtime,
Exactly. But yeah, it was just sort of interesting that like that narrative is stuck all the way to the point where like, because I was like, no, it is not. I was there. And so now I'm like, all right, let's see how many horrible emails I can locate in short order.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just very frustrating for me because there's also something I've witnessed from this, well, unfortunately now, a former friend was that the this desire in the conversation even, or just like in general in the past 2 weeks, like my girlfriend was like, he's just trying to antagonize you, because he knows he's one of the few people who is in his bubble who doesn't think just like him, and so but I'm very patient with people, right? And so, but even I have a tipping point in terms of how much what I can take. So it was so that kind of like, which is the theme I've noticed throughout, and then he's very tethered to his religion, which is not a bad thing for him to find good aspects of scripture to live by, right? But my dad, I was talking with my dad about it. He's like, yeah, son, you're just a little too Christian for him. He'll operate on the golden rule a little too much,
Mm.
which is a kind of a joke and a prod. But,
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit of an irony as well, though, right? That a lot of people who are framing problematic, right, viewpoints through Christian lens or Christian framing, I should say, right? Often are not great at following the actual principles of the Bible, right? Like, it's like those memes that talk about, well, how do you think Jesus would really treat immigrants, right? Or like the ones that bring up like, well, what did he do to the money lenders? Oh, that's right. He chased them out of the temple with a whip, right?
exactly. And that, yeah, so it's fascinating to me to see that kind of like also this, and gets at, I think, something that as a culture we're gonna have to deal with more and more, which is the more extreme you get in those viewpoints, the harder it is for you to even see your viewpoint,
Mhm.
and that's where I think this person is very it also, I mean, there's other aspects like just like a weaker mindset, like a more like the world owes me something, like
Mm.
that, like, just, I mean, but which is part of the issue, right? Of people who, this kind of entitlement that's been occurring, that the world changes so fast that it's hard to keep everybody up at that level, and you got to work for it, right? And there's, I think for him, there's a certain aspect of the subculture that feels like they made, maybe they did or maybe they didn't, the right choices, and it's still not helping them out, as opposed to making more choices and keeping positively moving forward. So yeah, but I do find, I mean, the kind of way in which, yeah, the muddling of messaging, and also like from now I've been reading up more on white supremacist roots in some aspects of Christianity,
Mm.
and seeing where that, because really he also um, yeah, he was just also just talking in a way that like was just this kind of stoking a strange like kind of like to what you were saying before about using an analogy incorrectly, of saying this is like this, but it's really, um, that kind of behavior. It's like it's very interesting because I can see how people take it hook, line, and sinker, right? Because you make an analogy well enough, and people are like, oh yeah, it is like that. And so I think for him, looking at, which is something that when we got into the argument about George Floyd, it's like, well, like it really, you're really distracting from the point here, and that's why you're creating prejudice, from by using this. And so and I even went so far as to try and not say you, but say people who will hear you say this will think this. You don't want that, right? And he of course just doubled down on it. And I was like, well, what if you had something in your system? And people, it's like, well, I don't, I'm not, I don't do that, so it's like, I'm like, okay, well, now so it's, yeah, it's kind of that I'm not part of the problem, and there's these things that we do see as a problem really aren't as, yeah, it's just de-escalating the severity of of what's going on. So
Yeah, it sounds like he was performing I'm one of the good ones and blame the victim at the same time, actually.
yeah, is it and really strange, right? Like
Yeah.
really, yeah,
It,
and like
well, it's always struck me how those 8 catchphrases account for so much, right? Denial and minimization. Just maybe not a bad place if folks have been listening to us talk for us to segue. You all right. Makeup session is done for this week. I do hope you all got some stuff at least close to in better shape. And I still want to just like reaffirm that if you are struggling to finish the draft, you really should reach out to me and at least like let me see what you have so far so that I can, if you're out of things to say, give you some tips on other aspects that you could take up or things that could be further expanded upon or otherwise drawn out. Okay, could I have folks whose cameras work go ahead and flip their cameras back on? Thank you. I'll wait a moment for the rest. There we go. And I'm going to, yay, they're all coming on. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Let me get this in a little bit better form so that I can see more rather than less people. Yep, got everybody on the same screen. Awesome. Okay. So what I'd like us to do is under each of these, maybe I should make this a little bit bigger. Under each of these tropes for getting off the hook or like avoiding having a serious talk about, remember these account for racism and sexism, I want us to think about moments in our lives where we've experienced these tropes. Give me just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and open the piece as well. I think it went right. Yep, right here.
like maybe some students can't see it as well. Maybe zoom in a little bit.
Zoom in a little bit more.
Yeah.
That. Okay. I had some notes once upon a time where I had very nice, short, succinct descriptions of each of these tropes, but I could not find them, so I've got to just kind of look at the text. Okay. Racism and sexism used to be problems, but they aren't anymore. The American dream is alive and well and available to everyone. There are no people with disabilities where I work, or that isn't an issue here. Affirmative action has actually turned the tables. If anyone's in trouble now, it's whites and men. Bear in mind, right, this is 20 years ago, just about, that he was calling these out as common ways that people would try to get off the hook from even having the conversation. So this particular trope is to deny that there even is a problem. And so just to give you a sense of what we might see on here, oops, let me go. Slavery ended hundreds of years ago. Why should we be blamed for the sins of our forefathers? Right, would be a way that somebody could be performing that trope, and it's one that I've heard often enough that it's easy at hand, right? And so I'm looking now for you to think of some other examples that we can list out under each of these. And of course, what's the really big problem with that one I just wrote down? Anyone? Boom, 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 boom. No volunteers? Are you stumped? I see some folks are like, yeah, what is wrong with that? Okay. So, couple things. Number one, depending on what we say counts as slavery, it's quite debatable whether slavery actually ended hundreds of years ago. We can think about sex trafficking. Maybe more to the point, we can think about free prison labor, right? The 13th Amendment says that slavery is illegal except, oh, you can't read it, Courtney? Does it need to be a little bit bigger?
That was before.
Oh, that was
Right.
before. Can you read it now? A little bit bigger? Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger for you. Go to 175.
I'm listening. I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee.
Okay. But if we think about prison labor and the fact that 13th Amendment, right, says slavery is abolished except for as punishment for a crime, we could actually throw a wrench into that argument that slavery even fully ended. But maybe more to the point, if somebody is saying slavery ended hundreds of years ago, therefore racism is over or a thing of the past, the easiest counterpoint is like, okay, slavery was abolished hundreds of years ago, but the civil rights movement was like 50 years ago, right? I once had a student actually turn in an essay. This is when I was teaching at a rich school in Ohio. When I say rich, like, you know, $250,000 or more per household for 90% of the students, right, per year. Very old boy institution. So I had a student turn in an essay that said, racism ended at Brown versus Board of Education. Don't get the reference, Xavier? So you don't know what that legal precedent is? No? Brown versus Board of Education was the ruling that officially legally outlawed segregation in schools specifically, right? But what that person wasn't taking into account is that that happened like decades as well, right? Prior to Martin Luther King and the entire movement. And so it's just like a very ahistorical type of statement. More in the chat here. Oh, sorry, I missed it. Oh, sorry, Courtney. I don't know what to do about that. Wait for a moment. All I had said was that in that Brown versus Board of Education argument, they weren't taking into account that that happened decades, right, prior to Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the civil rights movement. We might call it the first civil rights movement. Okay. What can we add to this first trope? What are some experiences you have with people denying that racism or sexism are still problems? And I want each person to contribute at least one. So maybe I can start at the bottom of my screen with Christina and Angie. Wait, what happened? I feel like we just lost Chris. Oh, okay, the camera just came on. There you are.
Let's make sure those mics are on.
Yep, You're definitely muted.
Oh, were you? Wait, did you guys ask us a question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We were talking.
to each
We
other
were talking.
about
Yeah.
the topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I was trying to think about, like, when the civil rights or whatever, not whatever, but like people like, I don't know when it was, but people were going to black or whatever, brown or whatever, people were going to they were protesting, and now people are like, why are you guys protesting? Like, we already gave you rights, so like stop protesting, like that. And so like it's like, why do you guys need to do this? Because we already gave you rights. And so I was just thinking of that, if that kind of counted on. And yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't
so we
think
could
of.
even just build off of what I was doing there, right? And say there's a
Mhm.
variant where people say, well, we already gave you rights. The civil rights movement was over 50 years ago. Something like that. Okay. Angie, do you have one you could add? Or was that, I'm sorry, I don't know your faces yet because you're always on the same camera.
Oh, that's okay.
No, I'm still thinking. We were just discussing her idea.
Okay, I can come back to you.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So let's go to Allie next. Be sure you unmute.
Can I have a little bit more time?
Sure. Quinn?
I was just thinking about this. I had one, but they basically already said it. So I was trying to think of something else to say.
Okay. It's pretty, just think of a time when somebody denied, right, that
Yeah.
these are still relevant issues.
Yeah, I hear people say like, I hear white people at my school say they're taking away my rights actually all the time.
There
So
we go.
Can I add on to that? Like,
Yeah.
this is Angie. So Quinn, I've heard the same thing. But for me, I've mostly heard people talk about guns. So like, they're like, no, why are they trying to put more laws in when you need those guns to protect ourselves, and just different things like that, and they minimize the effect it makes when there is not enough laws or background checks or that kind of stuff for the people who have guns.
I think that is particularly relevant to like the school shootings and stuff like that, right? We're thinking about racism and sexism specifically. I mean, one thing that your comment just brought to mind for me, right, was this idea that, oops, sorry, there we go. There's an orthodoxy in the narrative. Anyone who disagrees is outcast. You all heard those types of arguments before?
Yes.
In other words, trying to say, this is a way of denying and minimizing, right? It's trying to say that because more people are beginning to talk about these issues, that there's like a conspiracy at play, where the only reason that people think these are issues is because of evil news media propaganda, or and here this will land on the nose, I'm sure, right? Or indoctrination by your college professors or teachers. Super, super common in right-wing media in particular right now, which seems like a very dangerous distrust that they're building up of education, frankly. There's even a thing called professor watch list now, right? Where if a student doesn't like, something their professor has said, they can get them put on this list, like they're, an evil, biased person who's trying to brainwash the students. And it's worth like noting that it's Turning Point USA, right? That sort of spearheaded that. And if I remember correctly, they're actually affiliated with PragerU, which I don't know if you've ever seen, like their YouTube advertisements, but it's like, you're overreacting to it. It happens to whites too, from Xavier. Thank you. Happens to whites too. And on you're overreacting to it, I'm going to put that under blame the victim, actually. Slash being too sensitive, Snowflake, right? Okay, let's go to Courtney next. Oh, you're muted.
Can you ask the question again, please?
What are some moments you can remember where somebody was performing this trope of denying or minimizing that there is any problem in regard to racism or sexism?
I can't think of any right off the top of my head, I guess.
Okay, that's fine. What about for these other ones? Can you think of times somebody has blamed the victim, if we want to start adding to that list? Like said that it's the fault of a person of color or a woman when an issue of racism or sexism comes up? Ooh, that's a really good one coming from Christina.
Yeah, I can't think of any, I guess.
Okay.
These are hard things
Sorry.
to remember sometimes. So, 'cause, they're not necessarily the greatest things. I don't always want to remember those things. So it's all right.
All right. Allie and Christina have both added some good ones. Or sorry, that was Angie up there. Angie and Allie have both added some good ones to blame the victim. She was asking for it. And you all do feel free to pop stuff in the chat as we do this too. This is pretty similar, I think, right? She was dressed too provocatively. And then, Angie, where do you think the dress code observation should go on this list? Should it be on blame the victim, or maybe it's better this way? Or maybe that could just go in denial.
Well, like, probably like better this way, or yeah, blame the victim, like, oh, boys can't get their eyes off of that, so just cover it up. Or like girls, I mean, I don't know, or like, it's better this way just so that, there's no distraction from anyone, or stuff like that. I don't know. Yeah.
And then I'll put dress codes in parentheses so that we can kind of remember that. Okay. So let's open it up to both of these tropes at this point. What are some other ways that you've seen, and kind of keep going, maybe go to Jade and then Veronica next. Some moments that you've seen people of color get blamed for racism that they've experienced or tried to talk about, or another instance of another form of denying and minimizing.
I have two. It's just both things that people say, and when they say it, you're like, that is not thought through. One actually came from Kanye West. Was that was a 400 how slaves, the 400-year being slaves was their choice, how they weren't forced into it. And I see that that's not really a choice thing. No one wants to stay in that. But and then the deny and minimize, it's just, I don't know, the all lives matter thing, that's a load of garbage in my opinion, because everyone who says that does not believe that.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely see it, right, when there are instances where, let's say, a white person gets unjustly shot by police and there's still no all lives matter for them, right? Or in cases of, say, war overseas, or I think the one that's been like circulating a lot in the Memoverse is COVID-19 right now, right? And the recognition that a lot of all lives matter folks are also falling into the sort of trap of the anti-masking rhetoric, right? As though that's infringement on our freedom or something, when it's really just asking us to try to look out for each other.
Oh yeah, and then the people that like say these things will usually be the same people that are for the immigrant detention centers that lock up children, are for being oppressive towards LGBT community, are for racist stereotypes. And it's
yeah, there was a similar thing maybe 15 years ago. I'm really showing my age here. But the accusation used to be like, well, if you're pro-life, then how come you're okay with bombing children and things like that, right? Like, whose life? Okay, let's go to Veronica next.
So I put something in the chat. I don't know if you saw
Oh,
it yet.
sorry. When someone says, let's talk about it later, that bring, oh. That, I would say, goes under blame the victim, right? This makes me uncomfortable. Or deny, minimize, we could say. And we just talk about it later. Thank you. Maybe let's move on into call it something else. I gotta try to be better about time today. Okay, so the big example that Johnson gives for this one, underlining it, is sexism as battle of the sexes. And maybe I could say racism is just classism. Color has nothing to do with it. You'll hear that one really often, right? Or actually, maybe we'll say more commonly, the real problem is class. So in that type of vein, right, of calling it something else, or basically diminishing the importance of the issue. Thank you, Xavier. I'm not racist. I'm not like the Klan. And so this is a way of trying to equate all racism, right, with the most vile open types. So it's like, unless you're a neo-Nazi or a Klan member, you're not a racist, right? And then separate but equal, very good observation. Way of renaming segregation. What else can we think of for call it something else? Maybe we could have, oh, I don't see color. Actually, I'm going to put that one under deny and minimize, and also under I'm one of the good ones.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in the blame the victim, when people are like, oh, like Hispanics are just taking our jobs, so how can we get a job when they're taking them all? And also when it's like it's better this way, it's like, oh, just go get your papers and then you're legal. Like you don't have to cross the border, do anything illegal. And it's like just do it the right way. And it's like, how can you say that? But yeah,
Just
those are
come
just
here legally, as though there are no hindrances to doing that, right?
Yeah.
Oops, deny and minimize. Oops, sorry, what happened there? Can we just talk about it later?
And just at that point, simultaneously, the current administration is making it much harder. So it's twofold. It's not only, why can't you do this illegally? Well, because it's now becoming to the point where they're not even going to allow people who have legitimate concerns to, immigrate.
Right. Well, and we saw the way things were going actually when refugees began to be labeled illegal immigrants, right? When there's nothing illegal about seeking refugee status. The way that was framed as some sort of giant hoax or something, right? To fool us into allowing people here.
And I think those two comments about scarcity, taking our jobs, there's not enough space. So it's all these ideas are very much, in this scarcity fear.
Right. What happened to my window here? Sorry, I've lost my chat window a little bit. Can't, oh, there it is. Okay. I'm gonna, just for the sake of time, start getting us into some of these others. Okay, so give us an example. I don't know if that's Christina or Angie, what you mean by xenophobia and where it would fit on this list. Oh, what did I just say? Oh, I see. In response to what we were just talking about, right? With the gotcha. For it's better this way, one that you'll often hear is people just flock to people who are like them. Blacks prefer spending time with other blacks. Latinos, and you won't get the like PC version from somebody speaking from this standpoint, right? They probably wouldn't say Latinx. Like to speak with people of their own cultures. Things like this. Have you all seen this type of rationalization? Yeah. So how does that get framed for it's better this way, Priscilla? And I actually just saw Xavier's comment for it's better than it was. Yep.
Well, I know for like detention centers, the reason why the kids were separated from their families was because they are citizens and their parents aren't. And so I feel like them saying, because basically that is saying that it's better this way, keeping the kids under, America, where they're not even being treated as citizens, like they're not even being able to like talk to their families. And so that's why that made me think of that, because their whole thing is that, oh, well, they're citizens, so we should separate them from their families, even though they could have sent them with their families and they can always come back because they are citizens.
I see. They're citizens, so it's better for them to be separated from their families.
I mean, also a lot of people at the detention camps are in really terrible conditions.
Mhm. And there's been a bunch of sexual abuse as well.
Yeah. And they make profit out of every bed they fill. So if they keep them, they're making profit out of them. So
Wow.
yep.
Yeah, that show I told you all I binge watched years and years basically ends with them declaring war on the equivalent, right, of a refugee detention camp. It's like the same type of thing. They're talking about essentially what's happening, like allowing pestilence and disease to take care of the overcrowding problem. I'm going to just add to blame the victim. The parents should never have tried to come illegally. I have heard as justification, right, for that type of cruel treatment we were talking about. Okay. I know we're already going a little over time, but we're doing pretty well, all things considered. Usually this activity takes me quite a lot of time because I'll end up with like 20 items per list, but I'm doing an abbreviated version. So it doesn't count if you mean it. The classic is, it was just a joke. And then we could even add to blame the victim. Don't you have a sense of humor? Right?
Would it count for the people that like make apology videos online, but only when they're caught for like the racist thing? Like they don't apologize until someone says, "Hey, this is wrong," and then a whole bunch of people out them.
Mm-hmm. We could even just say like, I didn't intend that. As I didn't do that, right? I'll say, sorry, it was just a question. Could you elaborate on that, Ali? For folks who didn't get to read your essay?
So basically, some of my friends have been asked, like my friends with darker complexions, they've been asked if like their parents worked in the fields or harmful questions like that. But then they'll just get hit with the, sorry, it was just a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I needed you to clarify that for other folks because they wouldn't have known maybe why the question was offensive, right? Okay, and I know we can definitely add more to I'm one of the good ones. I think that's one of the most common tropes we see play out in this area of Washington, actually. At Evergreen, that was actually the worst thing that I saw in terms of like why they had so much trouble dealing with their issues. Was that a lot of people believed because it's a progressive place, it was immune to these issues, right? So almost collectively, well, this isn't one of those bad places, so therefore we can't have the problems, right? Sick and tired is somewhat self-explanatory, but I'll just give you something that I had a student say years ago that I managed to turn into a productive conversation because you hear this stuff enough to be prepared for it if you have these talks often enough. I'm so tired of having this white privilege bullshit shoved down my throat. To which I had to respond, oh, that's probably because you grew up poor. So you're thinking, you know, what privilege or leg up have I had? And we had to sort of turn that into a conversation about what non-economic privileges white people have in the U.S., right? In terms of freedom of movement and feelings of security and safety and belonging. So another variant of sick and tired that I've seen often is this is all they focus on in school anymore.
Oh, also,
Here.
also, I've heard people be like, oh, natives get like money, so why are they struggling? And it's like, oh, you know, we put them on reservations so that they could be closer to, you know, their people. But it's like, you know, this was all of natives' land, and now they only have that much. So how could you, you know, that's it.
And then just to like dovetail off that, the very long-standing idea that reparations are unreasonable because the people who were slaves are not alive. Anybody want to probe into why that is a short-sighted claim?
It's not taking in the factor of, you know, the descendants and like the social impacts and the, you know, environmental impacts and just how things set out after that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not thinking about how the generations were impacted. It's not thinking about the discrimination that happened in the job market. It's not thinking about the very real wealth gap in the country or generational wealth, the extent to which most wealth in the United States of America, despite what the bootstraps myth tells you, most wealth is inherited. Do anything else on I'm one of the good ones or sick and tired, or it doesn't count if you don't mean it?
I'm one of the good ones. A really good one is I have black friends.
Yes.
Oh, I have black friends. I can't be racist. Or people who are, I've heard a lot of old people on social media say, oh, well, I'm so sick and tired of these protests, no, not even protesters, looters, in trying to like pretty much criminalize the protests.
Ooh, so I could even add to that. Violence is never the answer. Why can't they just protest peacefully? And then I could add to it's better this way, thinking about Colin Kaepernick, right? Things like sports shouldn't be political, right? Yeah. Or don't bring politics to your job.
Or like friends, they're like, oh, we don't talk about politics. And like, you know, you're friends with people who like, you know, support Trump, and it's like, what do you do? Like, obviously there's going to be tension, you know.
Yeah, but honestly, it's more of like, you can have a difference in opinions, but a difference in values like that is completely different. It's not just politics.
Yeah.
Politics are connected to your values.
Yeah.
Yeah, often when people are saying, I don't want to talk politics, or I choose not to talk politics with my friends or with my family or stuff like that. Oh, hey, Quinn. Usually when that's, wait, how is that happening? Sorry, I just still image. But usually when people are saying that, it's because like there is something uncomfortable on the table, right? There is something uncomfortable that they wouldn't want to talk about. And usually I would say as well that if somebody's speaking that way, they have a certain privilege in having the choice to not think about politics. They can live a non-political life to the extent that whatever's happening politically almost certainly isn't going to impact their life. Go ahead, Graham.
Was just going to say, it reminds me of somebody who I had conflict with during the 2016 election who didn't vote and then proceeded to say, what makes you think anything is going to change? Which, this was also someone from a very, a white man from a very well-to-do family of concrete pours, that, it's difficult sometimes because he's, very, he very much understands the issues, but it was apparent to me that night that he was so wrapped up in his own personal decisions and what he thinks he has control over that, yes, of course, it's not going to affect you. So it will affect a lot of other people though. So I just think that's one. It's very difficult it's been very difficult for me to see some of these things in people. I've, like we've been talking about, might be not a Trump supporter, but not necessarily quite there yet.
Yeah, totally. I have, I'll just share this experience. I should say, because I mean, not like we openly said we're going to stop talking to each other or something. We had not been in touch for a long while, right? I had this friend who I'd met in Ohio and had ended up moving to Washington, and his brother consumes like the cringiest types of media, Breitbart and stuff like that. And actually, the first blowout I had with that family was because I was Facebook friends with both he and his brother. We got on some hikes together, and such like that. And he just kept posting all this incredibly Islamophobic stuff off of Breitbart, right? And so I kept jumping in the comments until finally, like, he basically cussed me out and, like, went really low, tried to be as insulting as possible. And I was like, well, I'm done then, right? So, so that was the brother of my friend, and the friend was of that mentality of like, I can just choose to turn politics off when it's convenient for me, right? I can choose not to talk about politics. And I think politics should never get in the way of friendship or family, and such like that, right? Which is not to say even he was, unaligned with me in most respects, just that like he thought it was optional in a way that it can't be for me, right? And it was only recently it came out, he had this like long Facebook post about it, that like now his brother has gotten to the point of disowning him as a brother, right, over these differences. And in their like back and forth conversation that he screen capped, he was basically doing that same move of trying to say, why do we have to talk about this? Like, let's not talk politics. And the brother getting progressively more aggressive, saying deeply hurtful things, right? Like, said that his partner was useless because they don't want to have kids, right? So like, put all of her value as a human being and being a vessel, right, to extend the family name or something. And essentially, it seems as though that person was becoming more and more radicalized over the years via that media, more and more fulfilling sort of stereotypes of, I mean, like the dude has a assault rifle and so on and so forth. And it seems as though, consuming that type of content really had an effect on his psyche over time, to where like he really believes a lot of that hateful rhetoric now. So it was like sad to see two brothers get to that point of no longer even being able to speak to each other, but also like not that surprising, because when that had happened to me and the brother, and I tried to tell my friend about it, he made it like it was my problem, right? Like I had caused the problems. Anything else you all are percolating on that we can add to this list before I call it for today? Were you thinking, Xavier, you have one to add, or you're just like, yeah, okay. So what I'll do then is post this Google Doc on announcements in our Canvas page so that you can all see it, and I'll make it editable for everybody as well. And if you think of other things that you want to throw on here, I want you to feel free to do that. Think of this as a resource, right? For all the different ways that these tropes play out in our lives. I do think it's really helpful for thinking about, you know, the more subtle variants of racism and sexism as you finish drafting your essays. I will stop sharing the screen now. So I will try to hop on your homework session tomorrow so that I can be available for anybody who maybe is still struggling with the essay at that point. Of course, I'm still, as with all the work, you know, accepting what you can give me at this point. Just try to get it done as soon as you can. Don't slack off on it because we only have like 2.5 weeks left now, even a little less. And I have to leave early on. Okay. Thank you for telling me in advance. Probably tell Graham in advance as well, because it's Graham's session on Friday.
Okay. We're going to try and pack a lot in too, guys. So, but the good news is we're going to get you outside.
Oh, I see. Because I've got the, okay, I got you. Because I've got the host abilities. They might have to leave early. Quinn and Xavier might have to leave early on Friday, or might not be there because they're going to go camping with no internet. So we'll just be sure to record that session so that you can watch it on YouTube. Sound good?
Yeah, that'd be great. Because yeah, we're and just for my assignments, because I'm, I guess, well, I'm not a host right now. I can't send people individual messages. However, if everybody's okay, I can let people know what is still needed or who needs to do what. Is everybody okay with that? Or does anybody not feel comfortable? Okay. So right now, everybody, Quinn, with the exception of Quinn and Angie, I believe, those are the only 2 people I don't have Braiding Sweetgrass responses for the first 8 chapters from. And then the second one, we're only actually Allie, Veronica, and Jade have completed those. So remember, you can record just a little snippet. These are really just so when we have a conversation together, you know, you can draw from the text. On the hand-drawn map, you guys have all done well. I just need one from Quinn and Angie as well. So yeah, that's really where we're at. So let me know if you need any help or clarification if you missed some important details. But the maps look great. You guys are getting this idea of coloring and labeling and just, you know, what the introduction activity was supposed to be about for our map making later. And yeah, so we're good there. And then just know that for Friday, my hope is to actually get you guys outside. So if you have Zoom on your computer, make sure your computer is all charged up, because what I'm going to have us do is actually have each one of you walk around and try and show me what's available, so then I can compile a list and a database that I'll build that then you can, then you'll come back on and we'll download onto your phone, and you'll go and collect. And with that question, actually, how many people here do not have a, or are going to have problems collecting data with a phone? Does everybody have that capability? Or, yeah, I just want to make sure if I should shift it all to the Chromebook, or if everybody's okay with their phone. You might, okay. I'm not sure. Okay, well, we'll try, you know what, we'll try them both. I think we'll be able to be It's just going to require me to be a little more adaptive. So yeah, anyway, that's all.
All right, you all. I'm going to close the room out.
Cool. All right. Well, and yeah, I think, and I'm going to come to your on Friday. We'll have some extra time to I think we're going to do an activity with you guys. Priscilla can update us more on that later. So awesome, guys. Great job today.
See you, everyone.